here to dig deeper into Apple's numbers is one of the most well-known Apple analysts, Gene Munster, managing director at Piper Jaffray. He's considered a Bloomberg Best, meaning that we've crunched the data, and he is one of the most accurate forecasters on Apple shares. Gene has an overweight rating on Apple. He joins us now on the phone. Gene, of course, you've been listening to the call all along as well. What do you think is the single most important headline today? Is it the buyback?
Yeah, I think new product categories is probably the biggest the headline. And ultimately, is that the buyback is what it is. But for Apple to be a growth story, they got to continue to innovate. And I think there's just been this belief that Apple's innovation period is at a lull or even stalled out. And I think that that's probably the biggest takeaway is that we're going into a good year.
So we're going to get deeper into these new potential product categories in a few minutes. But first, I want to ask you about the iPhone. You know, we heard a lot of gloom and doom leading into this report, and yet Apple sold 2 million more iPhones than analysts expected them to sell. Does that mean all is good in the smartphone category?
Well, in the markets that they're in, which is the smartphones above $400, all is really good. AT&T's numbers came out tonight. Their market share at Apple was 80%, which is up sequentially. The market share at Verizon was 55%. It was down a little bit sequentially, but up year over year. So all the metrics around the iPhone are still doing really well. The problem is the growth in the industry isn't coming from the markets that they're in. It's the phones below $400. And so that's an issue for Apple. And I think ultimately that's kind of what plays into the issue with the June guidance and just kind of really begs the question of when are they going to start to more aggressively go after this huge untapped market.
What about the revenue forecast for the next quarter? There was some disappointment about that. Would you say that's another issue?
Yeah, I think that the guidance for June really, from our perspective, it really was as expected. I think it might have been a little bit below where the street was at, but that really wasn't the surprise. And I think the stock really surged when they originally put the numbers out and is up a little bit now. So it's come back a little bit in the aftermarket. And I think part of that comes down to some of the comments about the strong product line in the fall, which I think people may be literally looking at that and saying, well, fall means September, October. That could create a little bit of risk to the September numbers. I'm just kind of sharing some of the feedback I've heard from investors as the call was going on via email. And so I think that I think that's probably the bigger question on investors' mind at this very minute is what's going on with the product roadmap. Good news is it's coming. The bad news is there's still another quarter in between there. That's something that we got to figure out.
What about China? You know, he talked about China Unicom. He talked about China Telecom. He didn't say anything, again, about China Mobile, yet he did say that it was their best quarter in China yet.
Yeah, I mean, the growth rates, you can kind of normalize them. It looks like 11%, but it's actually 18% based on sell-through versus sell-in. So that's probably the numbers are a little bit better than what they look like. But ultimately, for China to be an exciting market is they have to get China Mobile, as you mentioned. And he didn't say a lot. I put that more in the category of just Apple being coy about potential upcoming. And ultimately, we think that China Mobile will get announced this year.
Apple CEO Tim Cook talked about new products just moments ago on the earnings call. Take a listen to what he had to say.
I'm just saying we've got some really great stuff coming in the fall and across all of 2014.
Back with us to talk about it is Piper Jaffray analyst Gene Munster, one of the most well-known Apple analysts out there. Also with us, Cory Johnson, our editor-at-large, John Erlichman, our senior West Coast correspondent. So, Gene, what do you make of that comment? Probably more forthright than Tim Cook has been yet about what's to come. Let's start with the iPhone category. Could he be alluding to a cheaper iPhone coming in June?
I think so. I mean, I think that all the work that we've done is that I don't know if it's June or September or December quarter, but it's coming this year, is that there is a cheaper phone coming. And obviously, as we talked about earlier, it's a huge opportunity for them, kind of that low-end market. So I think that was part of it. But that doesn't play into the cheaper phone, doesn't play into Tim Cook's new category, new product category comment. Historically, they have talked about new products and being excited about future new products. but they haven't talked about new product categories. And so I think that is probably one of the things that really stood out to me. And that cheaper iPhone is critical to the growth story, but maybe doesn't even fit into that new product category story.
Okay, so we've heard about a potential iWatch and iTV. What do you think these potential new product categories could be, Gene?
I think it's both of them. I think they clearly want to do more in TV. I think that, when we talk to other players in the TV industry, they're convinced that Apple is going to do something there. The timing's always been the question. This is something that people have been talking about for a long time. But this is, again, the first time they're talking about new product categories. So I think that's one thing. Second is wearable technologies. We have a little bit less insight into what's going on there, but they've hired the guy who ran the wearable technologies for Motorola about a year and a half ago, so he works at Apple now, so that's kind of a fit. And the last thing, if you want to call this a product category, is this idea of mobile payments, basically turning your phone into a digital wallet so you don't have to wait in line as much or worry about receipts and loyalty programs. So there's some things around that, if that's kind of at the outside of kind of the category, but I think those are kind of the themes that are our focus over the next year.
And yet there's this question of how important could these new product categories be vis-a-vis the iPhone, Cory? I mean, everybody says, look, these new categories could be really interesting, but in terms of the bottom line, it's all about smartphones.
Well, we've heard about TV, and we've heard about a watch-like thing. At least that's what that patent looks like, a wearable device that can do things that might be worn on the wrist. And if you think of the TV market is already there. People already have TVs. People have already upgraded their TVs in recent years into flat-screen TVs and into HD TVs. And that might not be such a blank slate market in the way that phones were, or the way that smartphones were. The wearable computing thing is different. That's open-ended. We don't know how big that could be, if it could be big at all. But that's a sort of greenfield opportunity for them. And whether that's tied to an iPod-like device, or it's just a new iPod design, or it's something completely different, that's more of an open-ended space for them, and they can turn that into something.
And yet you wonder if any of these new categories are going to be more important than a cheaper iPhone, which is the key to the emerging markets. And John, you've been taking a really close look at that.
At how big they are. Yeah, and by the way, props to Gene Munster, who was the one who asked that question on the call about the new product categories. And so that comment you heard was based on Gene's question, and then it felt like in the room they were saying to him, Tim, don't say anything else. But two things on the iPhone. Number one, maybe there is a lower priced one coming, but Tim Cook's very careful about what he says. He talks about how they've brought the prices down on some of the existing phones, like the iPhone 4. He uses that example all the time, uses it in a big way today as a way to basically send the message we already have a cheaper product in the market. The other thing I thought was interesting was he got a question on bigger displays. Clearly, Samsung has seen an opportunity to offer bigger screen devices. So somebody said, you guys going for a 5-inch phone? And he said, some of our competitors have delivered bigger displays and made trade-offs along the way.
So that was pretty clear.
Right. So we would not make those trade-offs to deliver a bigger display. I mean, the wording has to be so careful, but, interpret it how
Well,
you
to his point, which is about the pricing of the phones, I mean, their phone price has come down. The average selling price for a phone in this quarter was $613, and that's the lowest it's been since 2009.
They don't tell you how many of the phones sold were iPhone 5s.
Right, but we can kind of see that the price came down. We can know that they're selling the cheaper phones.
So, Gene, first of all, good job getting that quote that I'm sure will be much talked about from Tim Cook about the new product categories. What do you think about potentially a bigger iPhone, a bigger screen? How likely is something like that, in addition to the cheaper iPhone?
I think in the next 3 to 6 months, I would say it's less than 50% likely. I think in the next 6 to 9 months, it's 90% likely. They're getting killed in Asia in the larger form factor. Women tend to like the existing iPhone size. Guys tend to like it a little bit bigger, and that's in the category where that 20% market share at AT&T that they don't have. It's the larger screen phone. So they're definitely aware of that. His comments were there. I think that it's coming, but again, it's hard to say whether that's the fall or early 2014 of when that actually comes out.